Well, you can't really tell, but it's too windy to do much aerial footage. But I was able to get some of this cloud material here. This is cold air advection stratocumulus coming in from the northwest, very blustery pattern. And this is based at about 2,000 feet above the ground. Another thing you don't see is the upper level low moving out to the northeast, located about right there, and that's pulling in some wraparound clouds into the backside of that system. And that's what we're seeing on the opening footage. Up in the northeast U.S., we have the remains of Zeta. That's moved quickly across the country overnight, over 1,000 miles easily. But we're still getting about 45 knots in that, in a very substantial precipitation field out ahead of it. And on the backside of that, we've got another infusion of cold air coming down through the Midwest. Making the rounds on social media, apparently there was a coffin-shaped tornado warning issued for the Mobile area last evening as Zeta passed by. I guess when you have to convey how serious these warnings are, you got to step up your game. The upper level patterns are, of course, the key to what's happening. Here we see the 250 millibar analysis up near the top of the troposphere. The big story here is this big upper level low. This is a nearly vertically stacked barotropic low, basically a cutoff low, which is being opened up into the main westerlies right here. If you go down to lower levels, 500, 700 millibars, you find the low almost in the very same position. There's just a tiny amount of vertical tilt. 850 millibar low located roughly about right here this morning, and the 250 millibar low just a little bit further west, further into the cold air. Anyway, by this evening, that should be up into the Midwest somewhere, and we'll be bringing in this northerly flow into the central U.S. The main belt of prevailing westerlies is up to the north, up there in western Canada, coming down through the Dakotas, and then another branch of that off into Ontario and Quebec. So we are, to a certain extent, building the ridge back in. Here we've got a little upper level low, very broad, not very strong, off the California coast. So that'll bear watching over the next week or so. And then further out to the west, this wave, this is going to have some impact in the northern U.S., especially in the Great Lakes, over the weekend. And here we can watch that come together on the 500 millibar heights and vorticity. This is good for looking at the upper level dynamics, and we're going to watch this area right here. Starting out, there's just kind of a weak wave up near Edmonton. We're not going to worry about that too much. What we're interested in is what's coming in from the west. See that right there? Very strong trough moving into the Seattle area tomorrow morning, and then across the northern states and towards Minneapolis Saturday night. And what we're looking at is the strong upper level energy. You see that little band of increased absolute vorticity over Minnesota? That's very important because it has an associated upward motion field out ahead of it and downward motion behind it. And if you're thinking maybe in terms of low pressure ahead of it and high pressure behind it, yeah, that's certainly the case. It may not actually be low pressure and high pressure. It could be strong pressure falls at the surface. So very possibly we could see something like that. Frontal system out ahead of it with a ridge building in behind it at the surface. Going into Sunday, yeah, that's a major system over the Great Lakes area, and that'll be heading into the northeast U.S. Sunday night into Monday. And if we look out to the west, yeah, there's that little cutoff low that came from, that little area of broad low heights offshore. And let's see what happens to that. It just spins in the Southern California area and then maybe opens up into a couple waves in the Southern Rockies around midweek. Yeah, and that holds together even into Wednesday and Thursday. So that'll probably bring some weather to the southern plains. And then, of course, our system leaving Texas, you can pretty much see the comma shape to that, or at least that would imply the precipitation field would be kind of like that. So we're getting on the backside of that, and that's going to move eastward into the Carolinas, Virginia, and then offshore very quickly overnight. So that's the story on the dynamics. Now you know everything that's going to happen this weekend. So putting that together, here's the surface pressure and thickness this evening. One thing that kind of stands out is this little pocket of cold air aloft. This corresponds to the upper level low, which is moving across the Nashville area. And you can see out ahead of it, very, very strong cold air advection in northern Georgia. So that's really going to strengthen this front here as it blasts southeast through Georgia. However, this entire complex of low pressure, the upper level low, everything, that's going to rapidly move offshore overnight. See, that's tomorrow morning. Everything's moving offshore, and we're just left with this little pocket of cold air advection and a little bit of snow up in the Albany area of New York. And then after that, looks pretty decent there for Friday night. High pressure across much of the country. However, yeah, the Pacific system can back that up, and you can see that coming out of the Pacific. Frontal system will be looking something like that. And it crosses the Rockies quickly overnight. And there's where we're at Sunday morning. And just to fill in the fronts, that's the next front coming down, warm front up to the north. And then for Saturday night, yeah, that front is advancing quickly on the Midwestern region. And most of the push of that is into the northeast U.S. Some of it does work into the southern U.S., but we're kind of on the tail end. And as quickly as that cold air comes down, Monday morning, we're already setting up return flow on the west side of that high, and this tends to be kind of a warm downslope pattern. So I think things will quickly moderate going into the beginning of next week. And then looking down the road a little bit, not much going on, but things get really active next weekend. Very well-developed Pacific system out there. And we can watch that thing cross the Rockies. Typically, most of the energy heads into the northern U.S. Every once in a while, it'll cross kind of like that. I don't think we're seeing that this time around. Yeah, there it goes. A lot of storms all the way up into the Dakotas for the start of the following week, around the 9th, but this is getting way out there. Looks like quite a snowstorm in Canada all the way down to the Dakotas. And then things getting active in the Caribbean. We're looking for the next tropical cyclone, which will be Eta, getting way up there in the alphabet. That could be it coming together around the 2nd. That's only 96 to 120 hours out, so that probably will come together. The GFS taking that into Nicaragua. Let's look at the European model. And to go that far south, we have to look at the low-resolution stuff. But pretty much going for a similar scenario. Not very strong at all, probably a tropical storm. And things remain kind of unsettled going into mid-November. And for our closer look at the weather today, there's the southeastern U.S. Much of the air that we have in Mississippi and Texas, that has been modifying very slowly over the past several days. However, up to the north, this is a fresh infusion of Canadian air. There, of course, Zeta up in Virginia, and a little baroclinic low out of Kentucky. Out ahead of that, we can see very high dew points up into the low to mid 70s, and that flows all the way into Virginia. So a lot of moisture for the remains of Zeta to work with. And there's the satellite loop for this afternoon. What we see is a little line of weak convection from northern Florida up to the Carolinas, and I think that's the eastern edge of the convection from Zeta as it moved northward, and that's leaving somewhat of an outflow boundary. And you can see out behind that some much drier air that kind of worked into the backside of that storm. Up to the north, that's where we get into the thick of it. Zeta located somewhere in that area there, and all the convective bands out ahead of it. And up to the north, a very impressive cold air advection pattern. Looks like a lot of lake air interactions across Lake Superior and Lake Michigan. And as you get further north into Quebec and Ontario, that's just the pure cold air advection cumulus flowing in from the north. One thing that I'm seeing here is it looks like a lot of the smaller lakes are starting to freeze up there in Canada. There's the map for the northeastern U.S. showing the strong cold air advection, northerly flow across all of the Great Lakes region. And we've got a data outage in Canada once again. Aviation Weather Center having the same problem. Not sure what's going on up there. I kind of wonder if that may be a transition to buffer code or something. Maybe something related to that. Typically don't see outages like that. Anyway, very strange. There's the map for the northwestern U.S. Can't do much with Canada, so we're not going to pay much attention to them until they get their problems straightened out. Looks like some good downslope flow in the high plains. 50s showing up there in Montana, 60s in Wyoming. So that's a pretty good recovery from what we saw a few days ago. And out in the Great Basin area, yeah, also 50s. But it's not totally devoid of weather up there. We can see that the prevailing westerly is still very strong, so we're getting a lot of cirrus and cirrostratus, south cumulus, moving across the northern plains. Further west it is clear. However, in the Willamette valleys, all the way into the Seattle area, a lot of fog and stratus. And looks really nice in the southwestern U.S. And finally, now that the clouds are gone, you can see some of the snow patterns. Looks like a lot of it was dumped east of Las Vegas, New Mexico, into the Tucumcari area and over to Klein's Corner. Also some snow around Amarillo, all the way up to Woodward, and then back westward across the Rocky Mountain region. I do see that there's not much snow out on the Colorado plains, but it looks like maybe around Lyman they did get a little bit of accumulation in that region. And there's a surface map. This is a very classic plateau high pattern, and that's where we get high pressure showing up over the valleys of Colorado, where you tend to get a lot of cold air trapped, and also over the area of northern Nevada, the Great Basin area. You get strong radiational cooling over that higher terrain, and so that also tends to increase the surface pressure. Down to the south, it looks like the heat low is trying to get going again, but temperatures still remaining in the 70s. It's still kind of early in the day, so I'm expecting some 80s to start popping up in that part of the country this afternoon. So that's all we got for Forecast Lab this afternoon. I do appreciate your support. If you want to help us out, there's the link for that, and that'll help ensure that this program keeps going. And I'll leave you with a little bit of footage taken last week in the Dallas area. Hope you all have a great Thursday evening, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.